Welcome to another edition of Eye on Sullivan. I am your host, Mike McGuire, joined today, as we are each week, by the chairman, Rob Doherty. Rob, happy 4th of July.
Happy 4th of July. I'm very excited about this weekend.
Don't say anything because we can't go very long. We don't want to upset the Undersheriff.
We have to be quick to get to the Undersheriff. He doesn't like to wait. But anyway, so it's going to be the first weekend since November that hasn't rained. I mean, cross your fingers on that. It's the real kickoff of the summer here in the Catskills. If you're driving on the roads around here, you know that already.
No question.
And it should be exciting.
Well, the weather is beautiful, and the skies are clear, and collectively the political scene is a little more clear than it was 1 week ago Tuesday, when we finally laid to rest one of the ugliest campaigns that we have seen in this county's history.
Well, to be fair, it was only ugly on one side.
That's true.
I mean, whoever you voted for, that's your choice, and I'm not going to talk about who you voted for, but what I am going to talk about is how that campaign got vicious, got ugly, attacked people's family members. One of the things Tim says in his closing remarks on his Facebook account was that, we have to have good people run. You will never get good people to run if your wife's being attacked, your kid's being attacked. I mean, vicious lies. I mean, he sits there and he talks about being a law and order guy, but then takes illegally obtained videos,
right,
and then cuts them so that they look even worse than they actually are.
Well, you and I have spoken for years about rules for radicals, and we've thrown it out there, and we would encourage anyone to get Saul Alinsky's book and read it. You don't have to take it from Rob and I.
No.
Read it. And one of the concepts in that book are this. Essentially, parenthetically, the American electorate is so naive that if you tell a lie often enough, sufficient number of people will believe it and they'll act on it.
Well, 38% of the electorate believed it this time.
Well, and, despite all of the work that was done in this campaign to assure people that there is absolutely nothing to support that there is a broad scale or any scale investigation into the operations of the sheriff's office in Sullivan County being undertaken by the FBI, on the morning of the 24th, fairly early in the morning, I was leaving my house and got a robocall that headed off with something in sum and substance: don't allow your sheriff's office to continue to be run by a group of people who are under investigation by the FBI. And there is nothing. Now, these are law and order people that are going to...
They say they are.
They say they are, and then they're going to take something that is on all fours with law enforcement investigations and the nature of investigations, and you're just going to fabricate it. So to go back to close this loop so we don't get the Undersheriff upset.
No, we're 3 minutes in. We got to go.
Where? What good people are going to run? I mean, why would a person that has a family, that has a good income, why would you put your family through this? For what? So that you can make less money, work longer hours, and put your family through hell.
Correct.
Why would you do that?
See, when you are, a trooper or a deputy, you punch out, you go home.
You go home.
When you're the sheriff or the undersheriff, you don't go home.
That's right.
You are on duty all the time.
That's right.
I believe it was just 2 years ago, Mike Schiff, the sheriff, ran a guy down in Monticello.
That is correct.
Is that correct?
On a DWI?
On DWI.
Yeah, right by the government center.
Chased him down.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm not a law officer. I got the tech.
Now I know up until December 31st of 2023, Sullivan County had a plan in place, had a policy in place that the chairman of the legislature also was on duty 24/7.
Oh, well, that policy has obviously been eradicated.
All right. With that, because he's armed and we're not,
yes,
it is a pleasure to welcome back to Eye on Sullivan our Undersheriff and hopefully Undersheriff for at least the next 4 years, Eric Chaboty. Eric, welcome to Ion Sullivan.
Good morning.
So that was a bruising campaign, huh?
Yeah, so, well, it started out with Tim Dymond coming to the Public Safety Committee of the legislature, and during public comment, basically announcing that he's running and then throwing out a whole litany of allegations.
Well, one of the allegations he talks about, which was kind of humorous to me, if you paid attention to that whole segment there, he talks about the opioid deaths, where Albie Bachman, one of the coroners for the county, had spoke 6 minutes before him and said,
Albie's a full-service guy. He'll take care of you while you're alive and declare you dead.
Exactly. And he was talking about how they were coming down year over year, and what a great job the county was doing on bringing down the deaths of the opioid crisis. And then Tim gets up and says, it's out of control.
Yeah.
So you knew what you were in for right there.
There were a lot of contradictions in his campaign, but in his opening salvo, he says the opioid crisis is out of control, drugs are out of control, crime's out of control. All you have to do is look at Broadway and Monticello to see what's going on. So he starts off by insulting the Monticello Police Department.
But let me tell you
right
something.
off the bat.
David Lindsay has done a fantastic job since he's taken over.
Well, David has stabilized things there. He's been there a while. He knows the business community. He knows the people. People trust David. He's really, and then that's not casting aspersions on his predecessors.
No, not at all.
But David is a guy that came up, literally walking up and down Broadway, walking the beats of us.
Yeah.
Then the people like him and they trust him.
I mean, I have to tell you, a good friend of mine owns the Monticello Bagel Bakery, and he had a huge problem with, not them just begging in front, but going through the garbage in the back, and it was a mess. And he was told to hire security. He's like, "What?"
I think I did. Every time I pay my village tax bill, I hired security.
Exactly. And now, no more problem. No more problem. They clear the table every day, and they keep people moving.
If you look at Broadway and Monticello, the police have done an outstanding job there.
Oh, yeah.
You don't see the open air drug dealing or anything
no.
like that. Maybe a couple of homeless people, but for the most part, to say that all you need to do is look at Broadway to see what the problem is about was absolutely out of bounds.
That bears out a fundamental misunderstanding by Mr. Dymond of the way policing is done in this county. Because although the sheriff has countywide jurisdiction and the state police have statewide jurisdiction, the association, my word, not theirs, of the chiefs and the sheriffs have divided up the principal areas so that we don't have three agencies policing a one-block area while the rest of the county goes. And Broadway and Monticello, primarily Undersheriff, is patrolled by whom?
It's the village police, and they call for help, and we help them out, and then we go back to the places, the municipalities in the county that don't have police.
Right, and they've got Detective Mike Davis, who's been working in the village for a long time.
Long time.
They as you've said, they do a real nice job. But fundamentally, you're running for sheriff. You want to be the one of the chief law enforcement officers in the county, and you don't even understand that the sheriff doesn't principally patrol Broadway in Monticello. Come on. And you got to understand that.
And then the campaign went on to insult just about every law enforcement officer in Sullivan County, including our detectives. I listened to a campaign phone call to a resident of Brooklyn. Tim Dymond called up a gentleman, and in the conversation, he says if he becomes sheriff, he's going to have detectives that show up, do investigations, and make arrests. And instantly, my detectives in the back room said, "What the heck are we doing now?" So he basically insulted them as well. So it was a negative campaign, and typically you see a negative campaign when you don't have a record of your own to run on.
Correct.
And when you look at his campaign in its totality, basically he was applying for like a senior detective job. He didn't talk about really any other aspect of the sheriff's office. Nothing about the civil division, not much about the jail. It was all about detectives and investigating crimes.
Well, he did talk about the jail a little bit.
I said not much about the jail.
To be fair.
And he kept saying we have to get back to basics. The sheriff's office has lost its way. we're out there every day in the community. We have a robust school resource officer program.
Well, he wanted to do away with that.
He hinted about that. He says, I really appreciate what they do, but I think we need more patrols on the night patrols.
I mean,
Right.
And the night, the night patrols in Sullivan County is kind of a shared services type of arrangement. Each police agency puts out its people on the midnight shift. The state police putting out the most. And there hasn't been really a call for more people. If there would be more personnel requested, we'd make that adjustment.
Well, and when something goes down at night, and we're getting back into summer when everything gets busier, you've got detectives in each of the agencies that are ready to respond 24/7. And I might just point out to Mr. Dymond, and I know he's aware of it, but maybe it was just a campaign ploy that he undertook a visit to Westchester Medical Center to visit one of your detectives who was permanently injured taking down a drug dealer.
Mm-hmm.
And then to make a comment like that we're going to get people that really make arrests, that's pretty offensive to these guys that put their life on the line to take these guys out.
I mean, I don't know if he won, how he manages that department going forward. I mean, the morale in the place. I mean, he talked about morale and how it was down and all this. I mean, I know a lot of the deputies and a lot of the detectives, and they were confiding in me that they were upset by the whole campaign. They were highly insulted, and if he won, I mean, they know how they were going to continue there.
Well, he built a campaign on the backs of two disgruntled detectives.
Well, those are the people
or two disgruntled employees.
Those are the people where the morale is low. The people who've been disciplined, who don't want to follow the rules, who've been held accountable. And the one person in particular, Mr. Paul Slavic, he is the originator of the FBI hoax. Now, what's interesting is he came up with this in 2021 when it looked like the sheriff was going to have a candidate. A gentleman by the name of Tyler Hutchinson emerged as a potential candidate. Mm-hmm. Some of the Democrats were interested in him. He failed to get enough signatures on petition to be a viable candidate. But that's when the FBI hoax came about in 2021, based on a February 2020 car accident with the Liberty Police Department.
Where the allegations were that a report was falsified.
Right.
It was corrected.
It was amended.
When legitimate evidence that was not available to the deputy that originally wrote the report was made available. And it had nothing to do with the sheriff's office. The car that was involved wasn't a sheriff's car.
Yeah, it was a Liberty
PD car.
So when Tyler Hutchinson's campaign started to fade, that whole plan was basically put on the shelf. We're talking 2021. That was the last time the sheriff ran. Mm-hmm. That whole thing was put on the shelf, and then it was brought out in time for the 2025 campaign. So you have allegations that are 5 years old that the FBI looked into and never went any further. Yes, they talked to people, but then they decided there was no reason to open an investigation.
There's no there
and that's
there.
what Nate Henderson found out through Sullivan's Legacy when he filed the FOIPA. And when that came out, they didn't know what to do, so they scrambled to keep that hoax alive.
Oh, scrambled. I mean, they put up a conversation that Mr. Slavic had with another deputy, and they put it up there, and they made it sound like it was last week that conversation was going on.
Yeah.
But that conversation was several years old.
That was from 2021. That conversation is typical of the collateral damage that people experienced in this campaign. The former chief of police from Liberty, who's now a DA's investigator, as a result of the campaign, he was implicated in a conspiracy to change the accident report.
He did nothing wrong.
He said, "Hey, the report didn't say we had our emergency lights on." Now they're implicating him in a conspiracy.
That'll make some interesting backroom discussions in the DA's office, because one of the other investigators was rumored to be part of the administration if Mr. Dymond had
he
prevailed.
came out and said he was going to be the undersheriff. And we're talking about Travis Hartman.
Yeah, he had no problem throwing his colleague under the bus.
So he's a DA's investigator, and he was running mate. He appeared in pictures with Tim Dymond,
Several.
wearing Tim Dymond gear. And
In fairness, the DA stayed out of this. He
Let
had
me tell
played
you.
no role in it.
Yes.
He should be applauded for
He
that.
should be.
Yeah,
He should be.
Because he has someone that's working for him. That's going to be the undersheriff.
Mm-hmm.
He has a relationship, a working relationship with the current sheriff, Michael Schiff, and he took no sides, no comments, no nothing. I mean, you had no idea which way
Right.
he was leaning,
Right.
which is
So
the
the-
ideal
the-
situation.
The point I want to make is that every allegation that the Dymond campaign came up with, where he banged his fist on the table and said there should be an investigation by the DA's office, Travis Hartman was in the middle of it. It was already investigated. They knew all the details, and to say that there should be an investigation is very disingenuous.
Of course.
Because they're fully aware of all this stuff. For instance, the video that I was supposedly involved in a love triangle with a former deputy and an
Yeah.
inmate. The DA's office knew all the details of that incident.
Yeah,
and
that
what
was one
happened.
that I was even aware of in the county attorney's office because it got a little bit of upheaval. We took a look at it in my office, and literally in 10 minutes it was clear what happened. We spoke to the people involved and found out what happened.
And let's be clear, they knew each other before that gentleman went to prison. Okay, it wasn't like their eyes met in the hallway in the jail. That's not what happened here, folks. They knew each other for years before he was incarcerated.
So for Tim Dymond and the campaign to demand an immediate investigation, disingenuous because it had already been looked into and there was nothing to it. So there was a lot of rumor and innuendo and
flat out lies. Flat
out lies. And there's an old saying: if somebody shows you who they are, believe them.
No question.
This is the case here. This is which way the sheriff's office would have gone if Tim Dymond had been elected sheriff.
If you're running for a legislative position, people pound the table and they make promises that have nothing to do with what they're going to be doing.
that they haven't kept, by the way.
Or promises that they haven't kept. But,
Correct.
when you're running for treasurer or DA or sheriff, in my mind, you're held to a higher standard because the fabric of what you are and the professional that you're going to be should be imbued in how you run your campaign. And when your campaign is based on lies about false investigations and calling for investigations that are done because the person that did them is part of your campaign, that's disingenuous.
Illegally obtained videotapes.
Yeah,
I mean, they weren't foiled. Those tapes weren't foiled. They were illegally obtained, and you're sitting there saying, the one thing that did
the ones
bother
from the jail you're referring to.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And the one thing that bothered me the most was when they were talking about retribution, okay, and how you or Mr. Schiff, the current sheriff, and the future sheriff, were going to get retribution against people that were against them. Whether you like Mike Schiff or you don't like Mike Schiff, I will tell you, he is the most benevolent person with power I have ever met in my life. And I know people who don't like him that will say that out loud. All right, they stress that all the time. Mike is as even-handed as they come. He is fair. He is a professional lawman and has been for 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
So when the mudslinging began, Mike Schiff said, "We're not going to go there. We're not going to go tit for tat. We're going to keep this clean." So he consistently took the high road.
Consistently.
And I'm just amazed at the people that Tim Dymond surrounded himself with. The people on Facebook, the people as part of his campaign, they were unbelievable. I mean, one person spent 10 years on workers' comp in the jail and trying to come across as some sort of authority on corrections. Another person who's a state trooper, used to be in a relationship with a sergeant in the sheriff's office. They had a bad breakup. She was a scorned woman, and that's why she was acting the way she was on Facebook. You had Paul Slavic, who had been held accountable, and and this is all information he provided on the internet. He's the one who called the FBI. When they asked him, "How do you know there's an FBI investigation?" He goes, "I called them." And I'm told that he's made such a nuisance of himself, they won't even take his calls anymore down at the FBI office.
Well, I also heard that he sold his home here in Neversink, correct?
That's according to the credit report.
Okay.
His home is sold, and he now lives in Broome County.
Broome County.
And to be fair, there were some issues. There's been no findings, there's been no allegations, but he was given an opportunity to resign, retire with his pension and everything, and to then come back and make these claims about investigations that don't exist because you're the one that called. The fact that you make a call doesn't you don't skip over investigation findings, charges, and go right to guilt. And that's what they did. And they're in law enforcement, and they know better.
I mean, they're basically, pulling the fire alarm.
Correct.
And then saying there's a fire.
Well, then arresting someone for arson.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's an arson investigation.
Yeah,
exactly.
They pull the fire alarm, and then they say there's an arson investigation.
Yeah. And you're like, wait a second, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And then that's what happened. And, you don't have to comment on this, but the fact that the chairman of the Republican Party, he mentioned it one time at a fundraiser for Mike, but he said nothing publicly.
Well, I want to get into that a little bit because, at times like that, I'm so proud to not be part of that party anymore.
Oh, Mike, come on, Mike, you're hurt.
But I've got a lot of people that that I love and care a great deal about, one of which I even sleep with every night. Well, not this week because she's away with the rest of the family on vacation, but that are members of that party. But before we get into that, we can now put Undersheriff, we can put that campaign behind us. Now I'm hearing.
No, you can't because they were 2 days after the election, after the primary. They're on Facebook calling his wife horrible names,
right?
Saying don't go eat at the Liberty Diner because that's where Mike had his watch party.
Now you want to hurt people.
And now we're going after local businesses that have given so much to the community.
And these are people that ran on a platform of we're committed to the community.
Correct. And this is what we're doing. And to call Tammy Chaboty names, I'm not saying this because Eric's sitting here. I'm saying this because if you know Tammy, she's the nicest, sweetest person who'll do anything for anyone. And to go after her is just brutal to me.
Well, since you raised that, I'm sensitive to this next issue because I deal with populations every day professionally that are struggling with this opioid situation.
Correct.
And we're friendly with Albie Bachman from our time with the county, and we know what the numbers are, and we applaud the work that's been done by all law enforcement and Hope Not Handcuffs and the Liberty PD and the Monticello PD.
And the drug task force that was created between myself, Wendy Brown and Megan Galligan. It's proven to be very successful.
Everybody's doing their part because we've buried way too many young people.
Correct.
And they made a campaign issue out of one of the success stories. They made an issue about a person who nobody, including her parents, hid from the fact that she had an issue.
No, they put it out there.
15, 16 years ago. And now she lives several hundred miles from Sullivan County, where most people that understand the drug epidemic understand that you need to get a fresh start in a fresh place, away from the people, places, and things that got you into it.
Correct.
And she has 2 healthy children and is in a healthy relationship and has a good home, and she becomes a campaign issue to establish how bad the opioid problem is. Meanwhile, she's a success story. That's despicable.
I agree. I think that might have been, Mike's breaking point. I think that's when he went on the radio, right?
Well, to be clear, we're talking about Mike Schiff's daughter.
We're talking about Mike's oldest daughter.
Oldest daughter, who he's been upfront about from the day she had a problem. He went around with his wife lecturing parents.
Yes, he did.
But she should be held up as the success story.
Correct.
That you can make bad decisions and through through good guidance, through family coming together and helping you along, that you can become a success story.
And she went to treatment, and she failed after treatment, and that's what we see. I argue that in court every day. Judge, we see a relapse because that's part of the process.
Correct.
And she did, and she struggled. And she was picked up in a couple of alleys and brought in. And now we've had success. She's not a statistic in terms of one that's in the ground.
Correct.
She's a statistic that her life is on a good track, and you're gonna ridicule her. These people are
just to try to gain some votes.
To gain some votes,
Correct.
and to blame the sheriff. We've got statistics of kids that have died in parents that cross all socioeconomic backgrounds.
Correct.
And we're going to now blame the parents for the what these kids have gone through, these young people. It's fundamentally
the
they don't understand the process.
Does not care if you're rich or poor.
It does not.
They don't care. Okay.
It's happier if you're rich.
They're much happier.
So typically what you find when you have a candidate that really doesn't have a record to speak of, you find negative campaigning.
Mm-hmm.
And they start throwing mud and trying to tear down the other candidate. And unfortunately, fortunately for us, unfortunately for Tim Dymond, that doesn't work in Sullivan County. People automatically get turned off.
Well, except for it kind of did, though.
It did a little bit.
That's
It
what
did a little
frightens
bit.
me as someone who tangentially has been in the system. Early on, I was looking at the numbers, and it was 70-30, and I was like, "Oh, that's where it should be." It got tighter than it should have gotten, and it's not because he had all his friends from Grahamsville came out. It's because too many people accepted some of that nonsense.
Never think, where the chairman of the Republican Party lives. Mike got beat up pretty bad there. Okay.
What about where the vice chairman lives?
Mike. Well, he tells everyone anytime they'll listen that he runs that town.
Right.
Right. The vice chair says he runs that town.
Right.
Mike won that town by 12.
12 by 12 votes.
By 12 votes. Correct. I do want to point out that Mike did win every district in the town of Bethel. I do want to point that out.
And how did he make out in Coshocton?
He lost 2-1 in Coshocton. So the people who were railing against Mike, that we should...
The same people that railed against you.
The same people that railed against me. See, they don't...
Well, they were brought in to get Democrats elected.
That was their job. Make no bones about that. I will tell you, to be fair, those folks, not the chair of the party, who did not get one signature for Mike in this election, not even his own, okay, which he could have gotten his own signature or signed someone's, right? The vice chair and the ex-chair did get the signatures required, which is being a good commitment. The one person that you do want to applaud is Rick Landers. Rick Landers won his town 2-1 for Mike.
And Rick is a guy that you haven't always seen eye to eye with.
I haven't always seen eye to eye with.
But you'll give people credit when they deserve it.
He deserves all the credit, but I do want to point out to Rick that, the SCVA is 3 times richer than when I first started with their contract, and there are no more dues, which I push for all the time.
Well, and they did a good job of keeping the LPGA event a secret. And made sure nobody knew about that.
Getting back to getting back to Gray Goldstein.
Yeah.
In all fairness, he did sign a petition at our signing event.
Okay, good. Okay, but Rick Landers went out and got votes. That's a fact. Okay, he made sure. I believe he asked for signs not once but twice. He was putting signs up. He was out there beating the bushes. Primaries are hard. Now you have to remember, this primary had more voters than any other primary ever. Okay. On the, I think they go down to 2004 is when they have the record of every election that was in the county.
And that includes the Galligan-Labuda primary for district attorney that was...
Yeah, but that was only about 27, 28, but the Bernardo Olbaraca one,
okay,
she had 2,900 and he had 900. So they had 3,700 in that one. And I was talking to some friends of mine, and we were kicking around numbers because you always try to guess, where is this going to be. I was right on the number on how many votes there were going to be, but I was wrong on Tim's availability to get more votes because I agreed with Eric. I didn't think that negative campaign would work.
Right.
But it was successful.
Yeah.
And, not that I'm encouraging it. I think that's despicable. Okay? If you want to sit there and talk record for record, I mean, have at it. I mean,
sure.
Have at it. If you want to sit there and sit down, whenever they attacked me in, the last campaign, I was a bad guy.
Right.
Right. I was a bad guy. I mean, they didn't say, we were, we had zero fiscal, weaknesses in the county. We didn't talk about funding, every department and settling every contract. We're halfway through their term, this term. There's not one contract settled yet.
Right.
Not one. Okay. They basically have 2 years to settle 8 contracts. I wish you the best of luck with that, by the way, folks. And that's all they had to say about Rob Daugherty was Rob Daugherty's a bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
When your taxes go up 10%, in this next budget, you remember who the good guy was and who the bad guy was.
So that's a good segue to the next area that I wanted to talk about. So if we go back to the Bernardo Oberacker time frame, Senator Martucci had announced that he was going to not seek re-election.
No, what happened was...
Well, actually, they redistricted.
So they redistricted him. So first he was in, and he was going to run.
Right.
And then they cut him out, and they put him in another district. And the reason he retired was because he didn't want to get into that type of fight, and the guy he was going to run against was that type of fight.
Was that kind of fight.
Right, and he said, I have a wife and 3 small children, and I'm not putting them through this.
So we had the leadership take a position there where we had a sitting senator, but not any contact with Sullivan County. He
Ever.
had been, he's from Cooperstown, great area, but not from Sullivan County. And we had a Sullivan County resident who now is a member of our legislature and had chaired the Ulster County legislature, so she certainly had a background.
Well, she had worked for Senator Bonisic.
Correct.
For a decade. I mean,
Right.
she knew her way around.
She knew her
Albany,
way.
Right?
And lived in the district 28 years.
And lived in the district 28 years.
And someone said, oh, you're new to the district. Oh, no, I'm not.
No.
I've lived here for 28
Peter
years.
Oberacker was.
He was brand new to the district.
So there, and we don't take any. It's nothing against Peter Oberacker.
No,
He's our elected senator, and we work with him, and it's
And
terrific.
he does a fine job.
But the leadership of the Republican Party in this county took the position to truly vilify Terry Bernardo
To this very day.
to the point where when she ran for legislature a year or so later, they wouldn't even support her then.
Well, see, the funny thing about that was, so Eric was in the room that time. So it was a chairs meeting only. I was invited because I was the chair of the legislature. And then they both got up and gave speeches, right? And they're both affable people. And I think they both would do a fine job. But the rule that Gary Moss, the former chair of the party, is chairs only vote. And I said that's illegal. Okay, this has to go in front of the whole committee, right? Because I am
You're forgetting the Daugherty rule. That rule appears on page 2
which is what
of the bylaws.
yeah. So people can say whatever they want about me. I'm the most transparent person there is out there. I remember when we were in the legislature, and they'd be like, "Oh, well, we can discuss this in the back." I'm like, "We're not discussing this in the back. It's first, second, discuss. Let's discuss."
Here we are.
And they're like, "Oh, well, we don't want to talk about it in the open."
Public.
I'm like, "What?" I mean, those are the rules.
Those
We're
are
not
the rules.
allowed to talk about this in the back.
Right.
And there were legislators who have said, that's not how we do this.
Right.
Out loud.
Right.
I mean, I was stunned by the whole thing. So they vilified Terry, and a very, very good law enforcement person had pointed out to me that, when the vote goes down for between chairs only, which is illegal, it's against the rules, Peter wins it, right? And then they say he's the winner, blah, blah, blah. And the next day, they put a picture on Facebook, and the picture was taken in the daylight.
Right.
But the vote happened at night.
At night.
Right? So they knew who was going to win the vote
Right.
before they even had the vote.
Right. So Terry was vilified basically for even breathing about a primary.
Correct.
Then we come to now, and seemingly a similar group of leadership of the Republican
Party. It's the exact
Party.
same group.
All of a sudden now they want to take a 20-year incumbent that has been the face of the Republican Party, and that's not in a negative way. That's in a very positive way. He's been very supportive of the Republican Party, supportive of Republican candidates.
I think him and Russell Reeves are the face of the Republican Party.
They're countywide elected,
correct.
And they've been good to the party.
And they've been very good to the party, and they're very active in going out and and only doing good things.
And they take candidates under their wing, and they try to support them, and
they do a great job.
And there now the same leadership is, oh no, we want to encourage there to be primaries. So Rob, I'm going to ask you, because you're the chair of the Bethel Committee, where does the Republican Party go right now? Because it seems like we're in a downward spiral with that party, because we've gotten the sheriff through, which is terrific. We're talking about a write-in campaign.
Let me tell you, a write-in campaign is insanity.
Correct.
Okay? So on average, with no opponent, if I'm not mistaken, Mike generally gets about 16,000 votes. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you think you're going to get 8,000 write-in people for you, I mean, it's a fool's errand. Right. Trust me when I tell you, it's a fool's errand.
But where does the Republican Party go now? Because they strategically gave away the legislature, and the they planned it, strategically did it.
Correct.
And the financial fallout from that is going to hit. And you talk to Josh Potosik, and
it's coming.
He'll tell you it's. You talk to Nancy Buck, and she'll tell you things are not looking as rosy as they did 2 years ago financially in the county.
Correct.
So where does the Republican Party go when it doesn't seem like it seems like we've got people dressed up as the heads of Mercedes-Benz are trying to convince people to buy Chevrolets. And there's nothing wrong with Chevrolets.
We love Chevrolet.
But Mercedes people should be supporting Mercedes.
So 3 years ago, there was not a member of the Republican committee that had a set of the bylaws.
Right.
There's maybe 3 or 4 people.
Right.
The funny thing is, I had found my mother-in-law and she was a committee person for 30 years. While my father-in-law, won election after election in Bethel. And then I was a committee person for a long time. I don't know if you knew that, Mike.
Somebody told me, but I had no dealings with it. So my wife was aware of it, though.
Yeah, she was very well aware of it. So I was a committeeman, and then so one day I'm just cleaning out a closet in my house, and I stumble upon the rules, the bylaws. I'm like, wait, I have the bylaws here, right? I'd asked for them several times. Oh, yeah, we'll get them to you. They never get them to you, right? So now I have them. So then, I scan them, and I just start handing them out to people. Like, these are the bylaws. These are the rules we play by.
Right.
And in fact, when we were discussing a primary, okay, there were people in the room that were chairs of towns of this county,
right,
that were vehemently against Mike. Vehemently. I mean vehemently. Cursing his name, and they would always try to clean it up at the end. It's because of Eric Chaboty, right?
Right.
So they would say,
many of whom were elected because of the guidance that they got from Eric Chaboty.
Oh, yes. Appeared in pictures with, strategized, the whole deal, got signatures, the whole deal, right? And it's more than just putting your name on a ballot. There's a lot of work that goes into it, and there's a lot of people you have to meet, and there's a lot that goes into it. And Eric Chaboty and Mike Schiff, there have not been better people to get candidates elected as Republicans. Now Russell Reeves, the last 6 years, has come into that role as well, and he does a great job also. So so then I had the rules, and then I started you know me, I love the rules. I'm going to follow the rules, the whole deal.
It's hard to play a game when you don't know the rules.
And I always know the rules, and I generally know the rules better than everyone else.
Correct.
Okay? So
which frustrates everyone else.
Correct. So we start distributing them. That night in the room, there was someone that said, well, we don't have to put this in front of the committee. And I was like, what? I said, we had actually handed out the bylaws that night.
And I'm familiar with the bylaws.
Yeah, correct. Because you had clean them up for Mr. Coombe.
Right.
So I was like, and I point out the rule. I'm like, we are an advisory committee only.
Only.
We have to go in front of the convention.
Right.
And then we did go to the convention, and we know the result. The reason why I thought Mike should be, one, I think he earned the right to be backed by the party.
Yep.
Number one. Number two was when the campaign started, it started off with a rip with negative right off
the get-go.
Right off the rip, right? And they didn't get to Chaboty yet. Right?
And negative, which was factually incorrect.
Incorrect. Well, the one thing I pointed out before, when Albie says one thing, right?
Within the same meeting.
6 minutes apart from each other. It's on the tape. You can watch it. It's plain as some, and he's reading stats, right?
Right, which is what Albie does every month. He comes up and gives you the grim stats.
Correct. And he's like, and he even talks about how well they're coming down, and law enforcement, is getting them down, right? And then Tim stands up and, gives a totally different story.
And that's a lot of the opioid money that you directed to law enforcement to give them the tools to take down the dealers.
Correct.
And the DA's office done a great job of putting the dealers away.
Correct. And it goes back. I mean, people forget, one of the things that Mike shifted. If you live in Smallwood, and when they were talking about the crime stats, and they were like, "Oh, crime's up in the county."
Right.
If you lived in Smallwood, okay. Mm-hmm. No, I don't live in Smallwood.
Well, you know that.
Okay, so
you live in a suburb of Smallwood.
Yeah, I live in Mungo Valley. So your house was guaranteed to get broken into every year. I mean, that was like a lock. I mean, like you don't leave anything in your cabin because they was going to get robbed.
Right.
Right.
The copper was going.
Yeah. They were robbing your house, right? And it was policies that the sheriff's office, when Mike came into office, along with obviously Mr. Chaboty, that stopped that to where you don't even it's not even a thought
not an
anymore,
issue anymore,
right? So I'm 56. When I was 20, I mean, you knew. I mean, like I remember my mother saying to us, "Make sure you take that home, that home, that home." But I don't use this in the city, Ma. And she was like, "It won't.
You won't use it here either.
It won't be here when you come back next year." I thought that was shocking.
So where does the Republican Party go now?
Well, I
mean, we keep going in the same direction. Eventually, rock bottom is going to be hit.
I think it's time for new leadership, quite frankly.
Or leadership. Because we don't have leadership right now.
No, I mean, there's always leadership. I mean, unfortunately, it's good or bad. I mean, that's where we're at. I mean, we need good leadership. First of all, we need to be transparent. I think every committee member should have a set of the bylaws. I think every committee member should know everyone else in the county who's on the committee, right? So we all know who we're dealing with, right?
You mean, so like at one time you would go to the Board of Elections and you would ask, who are the people that are elected to be in these committees? Oh, we don't keep that information.
So now it is on the BOE, just
correct,
so you know that.
It is, but that's mostly because of you, and I would also say the undersheriff,
he did a very good job,
pushed them to say, you can't tell me that you don't know who's on the conservative committees countywide because they're elected. You have to know.
Correct. So you know everyone that petitioned for the seats, and then you can look up the primary results. It's really that simple. And then I think that everyone should know, so in the Republican Party, it's a weighted vote. So everyone should know what the weight of their vote is.
Right.
So if, let the games begin with that, don't get me wrong. And that's what we did with Mr. Schiff and Mr. Chaboty when they put that name, when we went there, I believe that night there were like 13,600 points available. And Mike walked out of there. You guys got 6,500 or something like that?
6,800.
6,800. I mean, that's a trouncing. That's a trouncing. And the no vote to be plain was 5,000, right?
5,400 to stay neutral.
5,400 stay neutral.
Stay neutral. No endorsement.
That's quite. And Tim got what, 100? 100 points. That's good. But the reason why I pushed to not do that was because they were going to use that. That was a setup.
Right.
Okay, that was a Dick Coon trick.
Of course.
Okay, because he got up there and he lied right off the rip by saying that I tried to do something the year before, which was not true. I followed the rules, and the rule was that we're not allowed to endorse someone from another party if we have a candidate from our party.
Correct.
And that's the rule. In fact, he stood up and said, "You're correct."
That he did.
Right.
That was before Greg Goldstein told me that I don't have the right to vote
Correct.
as the county attorney.
Correct.
It's a conflict of interest if I exercise my right to vote. And I was then told that I had to leave a public meeting.
Okay. But they didn't ask other people who were not.
No, of course
committing
not.
to
No,
leave.
of course not. They even allowed them to take part in the meeting,
Okay. So
but not me. But that's okay.
that's okay. We are where we are.
We are.
So anyway, so then they so then Dick Coon gets up, and this is all a Dick Coon trick, which he has many. Trust me, he's very good at this.
Tricky Dick.
And so he then gets up there and pushes for the no vote, right?
Right.
We're gonna stay neutral. But that was a trick, and I'm gonna tell you why that was a trick. Because if they stay neutral, you don't think Tim's ad the next day is they know what we know, and they wouldn't even back a 20-year incumbent.
Right.
I mean, do you think that was a plausible, scenario if they went neutral?
I guess it's possible.
I mean, at that point, that's the campaign, I think. Right?
No question.
Right, and then they pile on more. I mean, could it have gotten worse? I mean, the only
They would have run that. That would have been the foundation block. Is the people that know him best wouldn't endorse him.
Correct. People that know him for 20 years wouldn't endorse him. You look back at it, and let me tell you, Eric was pounded in this, and and you want to say a good person, whether you like Eric or you don't like Eric, I really don't care. I know Eric very well, and Eric's a good person.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's got his wife, as you mentioned, is terrific.
Terrific.
He's got 2 children that are great.
Honor roll student kids, good kids. They stay out of trouble. I mean, I was shocked that they didn't bring them into the campaign. I mean, everyone else was fair game apparently.
Well, I mean, if it went on to November, they would have had to look for some fresh meat, and there would have been those 2 children.
I think that
they would have had their lives impacted, and they go to school. It would have been blistering. So
I just want to say that I'm happy. Yesterday, apparently, Board of Elections certified the election,
they certified the election.
and the final number is Tim Dymond 38.91% of the vote, Mike Schiff 61.05.
No, that's great. I mean, so it opened up a little bit after they read.
Yeah.
So
That's a wolf.
they're talking about a write-in campaign. That's just so they can continue to spew their
The
negative
ironic
crap.
thing is, throughout the campaign, they were calling Mike Schiff a rhino because he had
Right.
sought the Democratic endorsement, and that's not uncommon in this county. Russell Reeves was cross-endorsed in 23. Joe Perillo was cross-endorsed, so that's nothing out of the norm. Doesn't bother people, but they kept pounding that Mike Schiff's a rhino. So guess what the write-in campaign is? Democrats for Dymond. After he spent the last 5 months bashing Democrats.
Well, I think his whole campaign has been, saying one thing but doing something different. I mean, that's been his whole campaign.
Well, and so many mailers that we got that it vilified half the county because it was one of the knocks against Mike was that he sought that endorsement from the Democratic Party. And, there may be political differences, but, including my father and your father.
Yeah.
We're lifelong Democrats. So, I mean, to group that you're evil just because you sought the endorsement is crazy. But
That's just political strategy.
of course it is. We
Okay.
understand that. But, now, as the undersheriff points out, the first thing we do is, all right, well, we didn't get anywhere here, so now it's going to be Democrats for Dymond.
Okay, good luck.
Good luck. So where does the sheriff's office go? We got 4 years to look forward to in the few minutes that we've got left. What's on the horizon now for the sheriff's office?
Well, We're going to continue on with our three-prong approach to the opioid crisis.
Which has been very successful.
Education, treatment, and enforcement. In fact, we had a big drug bust last week. We're going to send out a press release on it today. It actually stretched from Monticello all the way to Honesdale, Pennsylvania. We worked with the authorities in Pennsylvania. We'll be talking about that.
You know, that's funny you mention that, not to interrupt you, but, you know, people that are friends of ours and want to see Mike do well, you know, every time there was a drug bust, they were like, you know, why isn't Mike in the picture? Why isn't Mike in the picture? And I'm like, because that's not who Mike is. He's not going to get in there
publicity
and be like, you know, one of those
photobomb.
You know, photobomb. You know, drug busts. You know, he coordinates them. He talks to his men and women who are going to do the bust.
He creates an environment where they can be successful, and he lets them be successful.
We give them the tools, and they go out and do it. I mean,
Correct.
He does comment afterwards. When we had that 3-kilogram bust, it was him and the district attorney at a press conference talking about it. And that was pretty substantial. You know, most of the time when you get multi-kilos, they're in a car traveling somewhere else.
Right.
They're not really based in the
Yeah, they're not operating out of
So
here.
that was a great
that was
arrest.
a big one, yeah.
But I mean, we had 66 narcotics arrests in the last 12 months alone.
Yeah.
With the associated search warrants. But anyway, continuing on, our school resource officer program, we're continually expanding that. Monticello just asked for another resource officer,
Wow.
Monticello School District. We have a robust drone program that's constantly evolving with 6 licensed FAA pilots.
I mean, that's new technology being expanded the whole time.
In the jail, we actually started conducting our own academy now. We don't have to ship people off to another
Wow.
county.
That's a
We're
big
actually
deal.
doing the academy in-house, and we'll be having a graduation
Wow,
very shortly.
look at that.
Graduation ceremony. It looks like we're going to be fully staffed by the end of this month. You know, we took advantage of
Wow.
the state COs who
Or
you know,
just not safe. They're just not safe.
felt there was no alternative but to leave state service. And we've offered them jobs, and they've come over. And, you know, they may be making a little less money, but, boy, they feel happy. And,
You know, they give up
they're
a lot.
seasoned, and they're trained, and
They're
they're going to
trained.
be
They
good
give up-
mentors to you.
And they give the mentors. I mean, that's the key, as you know. I mean, you know, people don't talk about when you guys first took over. Right? When you guys first took over, I believe there was like 3 deputies who got arrested. Right?
yeah, we had a clean house. We fired people. We arrested people.
So people have been around and paid attention. But when they talk about corruption, you guys came in and cleaned up corruption. I mean, that's what you guys did, and you've run a very good. You know, keep in mind, there's a couple hundred people involved in the sheriff's department.
200.
You know,
We have 200 employees.
So if there's a bad apple or so, you know, over, you know,
Which is inevitable.
Yeah,
What's
which
gonna
is
happen.
inevitable. I mean, if 1% of your people year over year are bad people, it's 2 people every year, right? And over 20 years, it's 40 people. I mean, it's a lot of people, right? But you don't have that many. You know, it's a very small number, and that's the point. Is that these things happen, you know, and you clean them up very quickly.
Well, of course, and one of the things that the sheriff and the undersheriff did when they came in was they gave Hal Smith the reins and gave him the tools to run that place and have supported him but not micromanaged him. And the result is there's no question whether you talk to inmates, whether you talk to leadership, whether you talk to the rank and file. No question who's in charge.
Oh no, we know who's in charge, and there's not a more experienced person.
No.
You know, in the county jail than Hal Smith. You see, you have to remember, you know, he did this for 20 some odd years as a guy standing in a post.
Correct.
Right? So he understands the whole, you know, he saw this from, you know, the old jail, which I don't know how you lived through that thing. And then, you know, and then as the pods change and everything changes and the new policies come in, and he's adapted to that. So, I mean, you want to talk about the right guy for the right job.
And make no mistake, he could jump into any post at any time, even in the new facility. And so he's respected and feared at times by his staff because they know he doesn't ask them to do anything that he hasn't already done.
Mm-hmm. Correct. But that I put that back to Mike Schiff, okay? So now Mike Schiff, when he comes in 20 years ago, hey, Hal who?
Yeah.
Have a nice day, right? And he brings in his own guy, but he didn't do that. He saw who was available. He saw the talent level, and he, to be quite frank, he's also brought people along into the administration and developed their talent as well, and let people, do their job.
Well, the sheriff didn't run promising his friends jobs.
Well, someone else did do that.
Right. He got in and assessed all the people that were in key leadership positions, and he added some leadership positions where they needed it, like the chief of patrol. That was
not there before
right.
they took
right.
office.
And there was no question that Hal was going to get his lieutenants and put that place in shape, and the chief of patrol had that authority, and he hired people that were of impeccable reputations and credentials. The first chief of patrol that you guys brought in was whom? Whew. Was Art Hawker.
Art Hawker, who had been a colonel in the state police.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, it was a homecoming for him because when he got back from Vietnam, he actually worked for the sheriff's office.
Yeah.
He was a detective, and then I think he made sergeant, and then he got called to the State Police Academy in 1977. And oddly enough, Mike Schiff was in that same academy class.
Oh wow, that's funny.
Yeah, I mean,
so it was a homecoming for him.
Impeccable reputation, and let me tell you something. Art Hawker, it doesn't matter if it's one of his people or not. If you do something wrong, he's not going to pull any punches.
And the other thing, with that department is, in the Dymond campaign, you had people from outside the county,
right?
Taking pop shots at the sheriff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why would someone from Orange County be taking a pop shot?
Other states, Delaware, Florida,
and I'm but you know who I'm talking about in Orange County. So we're gonna give jobs to people outside the county.
Of course.
I mean, we have residents here. We have qualified people here.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that they don't talk about is, Mike is the face of the Republican Party. We get all that, okay? But he doesn't see himself just as a Republican. He sees himself as a sheriff to everybody, right? Obviously, you have to run campaigns and that fun stuff, but he sees himself as a sheriff to everybody in the county.
Well, and it was a point, because I want to tie this back. We spoke about Paul Slavic, and we talk about a couple other disgruntled employees. Show me a leader who has commanded an organization with 200 employees for 20 years who don't have a couple of disgruntled employees, and I will show you an absentee leader.
Correct.
You can't. He's not there to make friends, and it's not like there's a general sense of upheaval and people distrust him and don't like him. If the 20 years they mined and found 2 or 3 disgruntled employees, I say, well done, Sheriff.
Correct.
Pretty good.
That's the whole point.
Yeah.
And that was my whole point the whole time, was that you're talking about a 200-person organization.
Yeah.
Okay.
For 20 years.
For 20 years. I mean, and let me tell you, cops. I mean, I hate to be the one to tell you this. They're ready to go. Right? I mean, they're usually not laid back people. They're ready to go.
You have some of your closest friends are cops, and your sister's a cop.
I mean, and you have to discipline people sometimes.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.
Right.
Okay. And there's a reason why sheriff's races are notoriously ugly. Okay, notoriously ugly. And this one was the ugliest one. I mean, I follow a lot of campaigns. This was the ugliest one. This was worse than the Orange County one, I think. Wouldn't you say?
I didn't really follow Orange County.
Yeah.
So it's 4th of July weekend.
You got nothing going
Happy
on, right?
Independence Day.
Yeah.
I'm going to get a shameless plug in. 4th of July parade in Lumberland is one of the best in the county.
Oh!
You want to get down there and
one in
see
Liberty.
the work that the supervisor and the board put together down there. We got a street fair in the Village of Liberty. I know the
do a great
PBA
job. That
is working
a great job.
hard to put that together. So get out there and celebrate 249 years. Undersheriff, what recommendations, what advice would you have from law enforcement's perspective to keep people safe in the water, on the river, and, of course, with fireworks? Every year we see issues with fireworks.
Well, first of all, as far as the Delaware River is concerned, wear a life jacket.
The water's going to be running. We've had a lot of rain.
Wear a life jacket. every
is fast.
person who's died out there since the National Park Service started keeping stats in 1980 has drowned because they didn't have a life.
Including people that were accomplished collegiate swimmers, competitive swimmers.
Well, the problem is the terrain is very rocky and then drops off quickly.
Yep.
You had a pop or two. You get out there, and that thing is fast. I mean, we've had a lot of water.
So
We're
number two, drinking and driving. We're going to be out on patrol looking for drunk drivers, drunk boaters. Make an adult decision not to drink and drive. We've had a lot of fatalities, a lot of serious injuries, and
that's law enforcement folks trying to keep us safe. They're not trying to harass you or step on your good time. Get a designated driver or put the keys away and
I'll tell you, the trend
someplace else.
The trend lately has been having designated drivers. I was at a recent road check, and the car would pull up, the window would come down, and it would smell like a brewery in there, but the driver was stone cold sober.
Which is great.
Yeah.
That's the education that starts with the DARE program. Something
Correct.
that the sheriff put a lot of time into and developed the whole youth bureau within the sheriff's office where someone you know well, Cheryl Crumley, heads that up. What a job the lieutenant does.
I've heard the name once or twice.
You've heard it, the name once or twice. But what a job she does.
And of course, the final piece is fireworks. So, as you know, the legislature legalized fireworks in New York State a few years ago, but it's the type of fireworks that don't fly up in the air, don't really explode. It's kind of like a ground display type of thing. Of course, you can easily go across the river to Pennsylvania and buy the full thing.
whole deal, yeah.
The big thing is don't let little kids light fireworks. Supervise.
You want to talk about
carefully.
a designated driver? I mean, you should have a designated person that lights that match.
Yeah, you really have to monitor the kids that they get burnt and they get hurt.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of our townships have great fireworks displays. Monticello Raceway, from when my kids were toddlers, we would take them out there. Cunningham, White Lake has a great display. We've gone out on boats and watched them from on the water.
I will be doing that.
You'll be doing that.
But let's be honest with ourselves. There's nothing more exciting than lighting your own fireworks.
We understand that. Of course, having worked in professional baseball, I've seen more fireworks shows than I cared about.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of professional shows out there. If you're going to be lighting your own, do it under supervision. We don't want anybody getting hurt. We don't want to
start any forest fires.
Watch the
Be
kiddies.
careful.
Right. With all the rain, trust me, that doesn't mean that the forest fire can't start real quick.
And we're all mom and dads the next day, so be careful.
Absolutely.
Thanks
So-
for coming on.
On behalf of Rob, Undersheriff, we wish you the best. We thank you for persevering. Please extend our best wishes to the sheriff. As I know that the chairman always takes the position, primaries are good because we can flesh out the issues, but then we get behind the ultimate
Correct.
the ultimate candidate, get behind him and support him and support the brand of whatever your party is, Democrat or Republican. So we're all now behind the sheriff. We wish you the best. We thank you for the good work that you've done over 20 years, and we look forward to at least another 20 more. Chairman, what do we got?
Another 20 more. Woo, Eric, he's got you in there till
I think Tammy's gonna be on the phone pretty soon.
Exactly. You want to see Tammy get mad? There you go. She's like, another day. I just, the person who, I saw get beat up was Tammy Chaboty, and, just like I said, she handled it with class, like she always does. She put up a very funny thing on Facebook, like 2 days after the primary, back to regular viewing. And
Regular scheduled programming.
regular scheduled programming. Let's just keep going on,
She just rolls right through it.
And, I'm glad she took time out from, helping, Joanne over at the animal sanctuary and, raising two lovely children to,
After being part of a campaign that was like a zoo, she's now back helping Joanne the good work that they do.
And I wish, Mike Schiff another successful 4 years. I mean, he's been very successful as sheriff. He's grown that department. Louis Alvarez, would tell you crazy stories about
Oh my God.
about equipment and
Wheels coming off of cars.
And Catholic converters coming off. They've absolutely changed that whole department. I mean, it was in the Stone Age when they took it over. They were arresting their own people.
Correct.
And now you're talking about 2 disgruntled employees that have 200. I mean, come on. And every year new people come on, people come off, they retire, they move on. It's still a great job. The CO part of it now is becoming a very, very good job in the county. The young people should look at that. It's becoming a professional job, which it wasn't, 3-4 years ago. And that's all because of Mike's shift. I mean, when we negotiated the contract, Mike was a stickler on a lot of stuff. He's a co-employer. Don't roll your eyes. and he said, no, I want this for my people. I want this for my people. And he,
even when the people didn't want it, he wanted it for their people.
And he did a very good job. And it's become a premier. The sheriff's department's become a premier employer in the county now. And it's all under Mike Schiff's leadership. Eric Chaboty's the undersheriff, but at the end of the day, Mike's name is on is at the top of is the name on the ballot, and he did a very good job. And I wish him continued success.
So, Chairman, 4th of July weekend, what's happening at the Wurtsboro Diner 4th of July weekend?
I won't know that much because I'll be on boat most of the weekend.
All right.
But hopefully it'll be busy.
They'll be open? You'll be open for dinner?
Yeah. Carmine's
Great
is
new menu?
busy. Yeah, new menu. Carmine's is busy.
Perfect.
Very, very busy. I would tell you to go stop by and say hello to Carmine, but he will stab me if I do that because he's so busy.
Correct.
He's like, don't bring me more business.
So, folks, we again appreciate you listening and following us, and we would ask if you've got a comment, if you think that there's something that we've covered that we haven't covered well or haven't covered completely, leave us a comment. Share the link to Ion Sullivan with others. Follow us certainly on Spotify or on YouTube. But please, don't just take little excerpts and put them up. You want to share the link? Share the link. Share the whole link because we want to get the subscribers. Get those subscribers up to 1,000, and then Ion Sullivan takes on a whole new role where we'll be able to live stream and get your comments live while we are recording. And if you're watching us on YouTube, and more people watch us on YouTube than on Spotify, you want to take the time right now to
smash
that like button and help us out so that we can build an audience and that we can represent the cross-section of views in the county. And if you have an idea for a show, someone that you want us to interview, we'll be happy to interview anyone as we get into the political season. We'd be happy to have people from both sides of the aisle. We'd be happy to do some debates on the issues, not opportunities to slander people and discourage good people from running. You want to debate on the issues, we'll be happy to use the forum for that purpose. So, on behalf of the chairman, we thank the undersheriff for his work. We thank him for persevering. We mostly thank Tammy for putting up with the nonsense that went on, and hopefully the regularly scheduled programming can continue. We thank our audience for following Ion Sullivan. You want to drop us an email, it's ionsullivan@gmail.com. Folks, be safe. 4th of July weekend is upon us. The summer is upon us. We welcome all of our summertime guests to the county, and we thank you for your contribution to the county. On behalf of the chairman, Rob Doherty, I'm Mike McGuire. We will be back next week with another edition of Ion Sullivan. Hello.